every Tuesday about this time. We get a little political on you. It is time for Party Scoopers. We bring a Democrat and a Republican into the studio. Jeff Link is here. Craig Robinson is here. And they go at it toe-to-toe to discuss things that are topical for today. So what's going on here, gentlemen?
Well, the big news today actually is on the Republican side. Rand Paul, the senator from Kentucky, is announcing this morning, surprisingly to everybody, that he's going to run for president of the United States. And it's interesting, he's the second major candidate to get in this race. He sort of comes at the race from a different place than all the other Republican candidates, and it will be interesting to see how this plays out here in Iowa and New Hampshire and the other states, because he's really not as hawkish in terms of U.S. intervention overseas as a lot of the other candidates. In fact, he is more reluctant to send troops into a number of these places. He said he spent 13 hours in a filibuster on the Senate floor speaking out against the use of drones. You know, he's really got this libertarian streak, which is different, and it's unclear how that's really going to play out in this race.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating, especially if he embraces those libertarian roots that he has, that his father had. And the thing about Rand is there's all these news stories where they're currently talking about the balancing act, because politically, he wants to kind of maneuver himself and be a little bit more reaching out to more mainstream Republican voters. And so there's this natural pull where, you know, can you be this libertarian candidate and still reach out? And I'm someone that thinks that the two really can't coexist. You have to embrace one or the other. And I think eventually he'll embrace his more libertarian views because, as Jeff mentioned, that's what separates him from the rest of the field. And I think the worst position to ever have on any campaign is somewhere in the middle, because you'll satisfy no one. And look, Ron Paul got 26,000 votes, over 21% of the vote in the 2012 caucuses, by being a very libertarian candidate. I think Rand Paul appeals to more people naturally just because he's 52 years old. He's younger. He's not, you know, sometimes his father was viewed as kind of the crazy old man. And, you know.
He was my crazy old man.
Yeah, no,
I love that guy.
Those are fighting words for Jason.
Yeah, but you know, the unique thing about him is how he motivated people. And my big question is, can Rand Paul motivate people like his father did? Because there was something when Ron Paul would be in front of this massive of students. You know, they liked him because he was contrarian. He was different. It wasn't the same old thing. And I actually think is what would make Rand Paul a much more formidable candidate in Iowa and New Hampshire. The problem is when the campaign goes to the South. What does that mean? You know, where social conservative issues really come into play? And so it's going to be interesting to watch.
Well, and the other thing, even before they get to the South, right? So being a little more dovish in Iowa is going to be okay, I think, because Iowans tend to be a little more dovish than I think the rest of the country. But when you get to things like criminal justice, Rand Paul's worked with Cory Booker in the Senate, for instance.
Legalization of marijuana.
Legalization of marijuana, and you know, sentencing reform. A number of these issues where he is true to his libertarian roots. Might appeal to some younger voters, but what's that going to do to older voters?
Well, and the other thing to watch is that I think if left to their natural ways, his dovish views might work in Iowa. But it was announced yesterday that there's already a third-party group that's going to spend $1 million in ads talking about his foreign policy views, comparing him to Obama, and basically saying that they have the same foreign policy when it comes to Iran. And, you know, that's just not good in a Republican caucus campaign. And so how do you respond to that much money being spent against you on TV ads this early in the race? So it's going to be, he's in a difficult spot.
And more importantly, how do we get these ads run on this station?
If they are going to run, you might as well run them here.
One thing I think that set his father ahead is his commercials. Like,
Right, they were great.
I hope he takes whoever he was doing his dad's commercials and he runs with them, because that's what caught my attention.
I will say this, that the Paul campaign is kind of, it's a continuation really of his father's campaign. A lot of the same people nationally are still running it. ads as well. And so I think that there will be some common themes. I think it'll have some edge to it, which I think appeals to people. They want something a little different than
So you think he's grabbing the baton and then moving forward?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. And I think this is all kind of posturing and maneuvering early on to say, look, I want to reach out. I want to be a more mainstream candidate. I mean, look, Mike Huckabee and Rick Santorum want to talk about blue-collar conservatism, but at the end of the day, what are they? They're strong social conservative candidates. And so at the end of the day, I think Rand Paul is going to be very viewed and be much like his father was.
Interesting. I like the fact that you mentioned he is 52 of the younger candidates. I thought that was very nicely said.
Hey, no problem.
Yeah.
As I approach those numbers,
It's younger every year. There's just one thing on the Democratic side that I wanted to make note of this morning. There is a big election today in the city of Chicago. And the reason why it's relevant here is because the Chicago election is a little bit of a microcosm of what's going on sort of in the soon-to-be Democratic primary for president, and that is you have Rahm Emanuel, who's the incumbent mayor, who has been a get-it-done kind of mayor. He's sort of been a straight talker to the teachers' unions and some of the other folks on pensions and other issues.
He kind of reminds you of a guy years ago named Richard Jay.
Yes, and he rubbed some people the wrong way in his first term. There's no doubt about it. That's why he didn't win in the first round of the election in Chicago. So today he faces a runoff against a guy who is kind of a hero of the left and of the unions, largely in Chicago. And it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
Interesting, yeah.
I was in Chicago yesterday. I spoke at the University of Chicago. As I walked into campus, there was thousands of yard signs, like just in the medians of the street. I mean, it was kind of fun.
Wow.
But if the yard signs mean anything, I think he's going to be fine. I mean, it was mostly pro-Rahm.
Because that's still a very union city.
Absolutely.
It's a very union pro city, so that's
Yes.
going to be an interesting. You might have to keep tabs on WTV.
Well, and it's sort of become a national election, and as you know, with the internet, all the Move On and a number of groups have taken this as a cause to try and oust Rahm
We'll
Emanuel.
have to see how many dead people vote today in Chicago.
Yeah.
Oh, there's always plenty. There's always
There's always
plenty.
Voter ID, right?
Once you're a citizen, you're a citizen for life. Beyond. Vote and vote off.
If
Vote
they can
once and
tax
vote
me when
often.
I'm dead, I should be able to
The real
vote,
question
right?
is Lou going to vote in this race?
Hey, I'm still registered, so what the heck. So it's 7:31. Thank you, gentlemen. Well done. We'll be right back. This is great.